All right, I apologize. I'm going to redo this. I am Dana McCall, City of North Bend Communications Manager, welcoming everyone to the Wildfire Resiliency and Preparedness Town Hall. I am merely the facilitator for this event. I am joined by Chief Shooter, Chief Clark from Eastside Fire and Rescue, and Matthew Axe from King Conservation District. I will ask that the chat bar, if you have after their presentations, if you have questions, I'd merely ask that you put your name into the chat bar, not put the question into it. We are going to be using the chat bar only for you to say, I would like to ask a question. We will call on you. You will be allowed to verbally answer your question. And if the chat bar is used for any other function beyond that, you will be excused from the meeting. With that, I will turn it over to Matthew and we will get this going.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you for the introduction. And thank you for everyone for joining tonight. Just give me a minute, I'll share my video and we'll start the presentation. Can everyone just see my slide there in the front? Okay. Tonight, we're going to talk about how we manage wildfire risks to our Western Washington homes. And just so everyone knows, as a lot of you know, North Bend is an area of King County that is at higher risk than some. Oh, sorry, I should back up. My name is Matthew Axe. I'm the Wildfire and Forest Resiliency with King Conservation District. I basically help small landowners and communities prepare for wildfire by identifying the risk of their individual property or community and giving them recommendations to reduce that risk. The recommendations you're going to hear tonight are surely very general recommendations to reduce your risk. If you would like a more in-depth assessment of your home, you can feel free to contact me and I will put my contact information at the end of the presentation. But tonight we're going to talk about King Conservation District. We're going to talk about fire behavior here in Western Washington. We're going to talk about defensible space. Chief Shutter will be talking about Eastside Fire and Rescue's quick response force. And then I will end with evacuation plans. So for some of you all that don't know who King Conservation District is, we are not part of the county government. We are a non-regulatory, non-enforcement special purpose district. Something similar like your fire district and your schools, except our focus is natural resources. And as I had said earlier, I assist communities in identifying those risks and increase the chances of them being damaged in a wildfire. I also conduct webinars and presentations throughout King County, as I am doing tonight. I'm going to show a short video on how we really can be more fire adaptive here in Western Washington. It does have sound, and then I will continue afterwards.
This is Fred. Hi, Fred. Fred lives in a community that is on the edge of natural areas and where wildfire has been a part of the landscape and human history for centuries. Fred's neighborhood is much like your neighborhood and the neighborhoods of 120 million people who live in and near forests and grasslands throughout America. Because Fred lives near land that needs fire to be healthy, he knows he has to live with wildfire. Fire is simply inevitable where Fred lives, so he has been working hard to prepare. He has been clearing vegetation from around his home and making sure his house is built with materials that are less likely to burn. Last year, he replaced his wood shake roof with a metal one. Fred also knows that his effort will be most effective when the whole neighborhood is prepared, so he's also been talking with his neighbors and encouraging them to prepare for wildfire. Hi, Fred's neighbors. Fred has even been packing a go kit with important papers, pills, photographs, and supplies in case he has to evacuate during a wildfire. Fred's neighbor, Damien, is a volunteer with the local fire department. Damien and his co-workers train together for forest fires, are properly equipped, and talk to the community about wildfire risk, the importance of being ready to evacuate if necessary, and even the best evacuation routes to use. Damien and his coworkers are also trained to use controlled burns in natural areas to improve community safety and give nature a boost. Across town, Lupe is working in her small bakery. She too understands that there is a risk of wildfire in her community, and so she has taken action to prepare her business. She has her computer inventory backed up off-site and has a business continuity plan that will help her stay in business after wildfire. Lupe's Aunt Mary works at City Hall. Mary has been working with the community to update the Community Wildfire Protection Plan and draft codes and ordinances that help people build new homes in the most appropriate places with materials that are less likely to catch fire. Mary works with developers to make sure new neighborhoods have more than one way in and out in case there is an evacuation. She has even been working with her local land management agencies as they identify land around the community that needs a little more work to be ready for wildfire. Fred, Damien, Lupe, and Mary are all working to make their community better able to live with wildfire because they know fire is natural where they have chosen to live. They understand their risk and are actively working to reduce that risk. Fred, Damien, Lupe, and Mary live in a fire-adapted community, even if they don't realize it. As we have seen from Fred and his neighbors, there are many tools and strategies for communities adapting to wildland fire. Not every community will use every tool, but generally speaking, the more actions a community takes, the more ready for fire it will become. As we have seen, Fred and his neighbors are taking action before a wildfire. But it is important to realize that community preparedness before a fire, safe and efficient wildfire response during a fire, and a well-resourced and supported recovery after a fire are all part of the process. What does success look like? Just like in Fred's neighborhood, success looks like many people working together to prepare for the effects of wildfire. In that way, the responsibilities and benefits of adapting to wildfire are shared among all those who live in places where fires burn. Here are 5 easy ways you can help your community become more fire adapted. 1. Make sure your home is prepared for wildfire by using fire-resistant construction materials and keeping vegetation from touching the structure. 2. Talk to your neighbors about wildfire and encourage them to take action too. 3. Prepare your family for an evacuation by making an emergency kit and having an evacuation plan. 4. Find out if your community has a community wildfire protection plan. Volunteer to work with your local fire response organizations to create or update it. 5. Visit www.fireadaptedwashington.org to learn more.
Thank you for listening to the video. Little facts about wildfires. Last year, nationally, 8 million acres burned, with the devastating wildfires in California and Oregon burning over 5 million of those acres and damaging and destroying multiple structures. This is a map of King County and how many fires we've had since 1973 till present day. Of Washington State, I do apologize. This map is of King County and the amount of fires that we've had from that same time period. These maps are just purely to show that we have wildfires are part of our natural landscape and pattern. Western Washington historically has large catastrophic fires every few hundred years, with our forest recovering between them. In 2020, Washington State had approximately 1,700 fires that burned just over 800,000 acres and damaged and destroyed 724 structures. With the Sumner Graham fire burning approximately 700 acres just located in Pierce County and damaging and destroying multiple homes, along with being one of the largest wildland urban interface fire we have seen in some time here in Western Washington. This year, back in May, we had a Green Valley fire that burned 50 acres and was started by someone burning slash. There are multiple reasons why wildfires have been a rising concern in Western Washington. Past forest management practices have left a lot of fuel on our forest floor. Paired with climate change, this has led to drier fuels on our forest. And lastly, we have seen an increase in population in the wildland urban interfaces. These types of development pose additional risks when related to wildfires. This is because 90% of wildfires in Western Washington are human caused. The reason wildfires are going to be hard to fight is, first, there will be more wildfires due to human ignition. A few examples of man-made ignitions are campfires, off-roading vehicle on hot, dry grasses, cigarettes, people shooting firearms in undesignated places, fireworks, and being let off in the wrong place. Secondly, wildfires that occur will pose a higher risk to lives and homes. They are harder to fight, and we will not be able to let natural fires burn. Now let's discuss how we can determine how wildfires can start and spread. When we do that, we look at two different triangles. One is the fire triangle and one is the fire behavior triangle. One of the things to take from this is the only thing we can manage to reduce our risk is fuel. We can't affect how much oxygen's in the air. We can't affect heat source. We can't affect the weather, and we cannot change topography, but we can change our fuel loads. I'm going to talk about three different types of fuels here. The first is fine fuels. This is that dead or dried leaf litter, needles, small branches on or around our homes. Landscape bark is also a fine fuel that dries out quickly during our summer and can become ignitable. Secondly, are our man-made fuels. These are the fuels like lawn chairs, construction material, additional structures that could increase the size of a fire and create more embers. Lastly is ladder fuels. This is plants, woody debris, structures that can allow a fire to spread from the surface of the ground into the canopy of our trees. When we talk about trying to manage ladder fuels, we have to think about the spacing of our vegetation. Having ignitable fuels around our homes can increase the chances of our home being affected by a wildfire ignition source. Having an accumulation of fine fuels can be ignited by a wind-blown ember from a wildfire up to a mile away. And I think in Australia, the largest tracked ember was up to 18 miles. Embers can create a surface fire that could create a larger catastrophic crown fire if the fuels are allowed to climb into the canopy of our forest. So how can we decrease the chances of being affected by one of the ignition sources? By creating a defensible space. A defensible space is a natural or landscape area around our homes that is maintained and designated to reduce our fire danger. A defensible space is broken down into 3 different home ignition zones. They start at our home and go out to 100 feet or further depending on additional conditions. Zone 1, this is our immediate zone. That's at first from your home out to 5 feet. We're looking at the roofs, decks, other attachments around the exterior of our home for those fine fuels, leaves, twigs, needles, and identifying and removing dense or dead plant vegetation. Zone 2 is the intermediate zone. We want to maintain this area lean, clean, and green. And lastly is our zone 3. That's at 30 to 100 feet from our home. We want to identify and remove ladder fuels, break up continuous fuels, increase spacing between shrubs and trees is how we do that. All the while managing our forests to be a healthy Western Washington forest. But where I want really people to understand is that first 30 feet around your home is the most important zones to work in. That is our home protection zone. This is where we get the highest impact on our defensible space. And as you saw in the video, when neighbors work together, they create these interlocking zones and increase the wildfire resiliency for everyone. A defensible space also can provide a safe place for firefighters to actively fight a wildfire. And at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Chief Shutter, and he's going to speak about Eastside Fire and Rescue's quick response. You ready, Chief?
Yep, sure am. Thanks, Matthew. Can you advance the slides for me? Okay. It's actually interesting that we're talking about the quick reaction force right now. With the weather we're expecting this weekend, particularly Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and temperatures in the triple digits. We've already made an operational change to add what we call a quick reaction force. I do have a typo in the email. This is actually 3 EFR members from the wildland firefighting team in a specialized training and what we call a red card certification on a brush truck that'll be patrolling the area, particularly just for any brush fires or wildland fires that might break out. And the nice thing about this is it allows us to get on the fire a lot faster. We have been doing this for a number of years now. Typically 4th of July is one of the times we upstaff, but whenever we have an east wind or a red flag warning or something like that, we will upstaff a rig with specially trained personnel. Another thing I'd like to note is at EFR, every single firefighter has gone through basic wildfire training, and a number of personnel have gone through what's called an arduous pack test, which allows them to go on a state mobility and actually do some wildland firefighting across the state and in Oregon and California, which brings a lot of experience home from our personnel when it comes to fighting wildfires here also. So next slide, Matthew, please. And again, I mentioned that during long dry periods, we will activate these units, and that's June through October is pretty typical for that. Some of the things that trigger that are high winds and high temperatures, along with low humidity, which is this weekend. I haven't heard much about the winds, but certainly the high temperatures and low humidity recovery on the fuels at night is one of the things that has made us decide to activate an extra unit. And then if we have a lot of brush fires starting in the area, that'll also just do the increased call volume. We'll add a unit for that too. And then again, 4th of July and other weather patterns that come into play. So next slide. As I said earlier, it gives us a greater opportunity to actually get to a start or a wildland fire start quicker with the right piece of equipment and the right trained personnel to help combat that fire. One thing I'd also like to note is this is an additional staffing on top of what our basic staffing is. So this doesn't impact any of our typical calls that we would go on, 8 calls, car accidents, or any other types of calls. This is an additional staffing element that we put in place just for these types of events. So that's kind of it in a nutshell on how we up our staffing and kind of respond to increased risk potential for wildland fires. So thanks, Matthew.
Thank you, Chief. So let's take a look at what I commonly see when I conduct a wildfire safety evaluation. In zone 1, I commonly see those accumulation of fine fuels in the valleys, the roof, the gutters, around the base of the home. I see stacked firewood right next to a wood siding. I see dense and dead vegetation right next to wood siding, which both of these can create a ladder fill. And lastly, I see landscape bark right within the first 5 feet. Some of the things that we can do to reduce this risk is get over and blow those needles off out of the valleys, get them off out of the gutters around the base of our home. As Chief said, we're starting to heat up. So moving that firewood out to 30 feet reduces that risk. When you're out there gardening, pull out all that dead debris, open up the space in your vegetation. They will actually love you for it because they won't have to compete. And when it comes to the bark, if you can replace this with a hardscape materials like rock, concrete, pavers, it reduces the risk. If you choose not to do that, you can always just have bare soil also. In zone 2, I typically see gas tanks surrounded by vegetation that can increase a fire size right next to a home. I see dormant lawns that go right up next to homes. And I see additional structures. Pushing that vegetation back from those gas tanks by 5 feet and hardscaping around reduces that risk. Maintaining your yard green within the first 30 feet can reduce the chances of a fire spreading towards your home. If your yard does happen to go dormant like this, do not mow it because you increase the chances of you starting a fire on your property. And additional structures should always be treated like you treat your home. This will create those interlocking zones and increase your defensible space. Lastly, zone 3. We're looking for a lot of just mainly emergency services. Can they access your home and can they find your home? Is your sign easily visible at all times of the day? Is vegetation crowding your driveway where they can't access your property? And is your forest healthy and resilient enough to survive a wildfire? In this case, that is the recommended sign to be able to be seen at all times of day. When vegetation comes encroaching on your driveway, push the vegetation back 12 feet, prune your trees up 15 feet. And with your forest, if I'm out there looking at it, we can talk about how you create your forest and create a more resilient forest to wildfires. So now that we've done all this work, what do? We do regular maintenance to make sure that we maintain that defensible space. Always focusing on zone 1 and zone 2, that first 30 feet around your home. Evacuation plans. Evacuation plans are just as important as a defensible space. A pre-planned evacuation route can identify every opportunity and every route to be able to evacuate during a natural disaster. A few things you can add to your evacuation plan in your go bag is important documents, home deeds, insurance, life insurance documents, water, medical kits. Having a pre-planned evacuation route and a go bag decreases the time that is needed to get out. And if you're ever told to evacuate your home, please don't stay, just leave. In summary, what we've talked about, before I go here, I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm gonna show a video from last year, if it'll stop sharing for me. Sorry about that. I'm going to show a video from last year from the Sumner Gray Fire that actually had a defensible space and actually survived the wildfire. That is the fire. That home survived last year's 700-acre Graham Sumner fire, which was one of the most devastating fires that we've had here in Western Washington. Today, we've spoken about King Conservation District, fire behavior, defensible space, Eastside Fire and Rescue Quick Response Team, and evacuation plans. Are there any questions?
Matt, this is Jean Buckner.
How you doing, Jean?
Hey there, Matt. First of all, I want folks to know that you are an incredible asset. You came out to our home and helped us so much with fireproofing. We've done so many of your recommendations and just now finishing up a lot of hardscaping around the house. So thank you very much for that. And I would encourage anybody that's interested to give your organization a call. Secondly, I would like, I think, to ask the city about your recommendation and also Department of Natural Resources recommendation to keep landscape low and green. That seems to be at odds with the water conservation ordinance. And I'd like to hear what the city has to say about that. You may or may not know, Matt, they're asking us to potentially limit our watering in the hot, dry times when the water flow is low, at least in their mitigation source. And I'm concerned as the president of Snoqualmie Valley Trail and River about the impact on the river of the additional water outlets that will be plugged up to the river in the event the city continues to develop more units in the area, which it sounds to me like you guys are saying we really shouldn't be building in this area. So those are my questions. I think, Matt, they're actually more focused toward the city. No questions of you. You did a great job, and I just wish more people would utilize your services.
Hi, Jean. I believe we have Mayor McFarland on the call. He can answer that question for you. And then we also have Councilmember Gothel, who might be able to chime in as well.
Thank you.
Well, I thought I had him on the call. I apologize. Rob, are you on the call? 54, I'm trying to find, I'm going to unmute him. Sorry, I apologize, everyone.
You know, technology always gives us problems when we don't want it to, right, Dana?
Rob, I have you unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sorry, everyone. Yes, we can.
All right, you're hearing me?
Yep,
All
we're
right,
hearing
great.
you.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Yeah, so, you know, the best way we can address this is straightforward and to say, I believe, as has often been the case with this group, they are trying to press one agenda through another. I don't think there's anything inconsistent with the city's water policy and its goals for a water conservation ordinance that is inconsistent with the Firewise and the presentation tonight. Water conservation ordinance does not prevent the watering of lawns or of landscape. It's mostly oriented around better practices, education, consistent with what's being discussed, and particularly it is advising people that in the hottest times of the year, watering in the early morning or the late evening is the most effective way to get the best use out of your water. I didn't hear anything in the presentation which was suggesting that the fire department is against new residents or new structures. It's the way that we treat things. We're glad that the residents here are taking care of their properties, glad that they're listening to the advice that's being given. And, you know, we're very proud of the way that we're working with the water. Hasn't anything to, you know, the fire suppression that we're talking about here has nothing to do with mitigation, nothing to do with our water resource. So I appreciate that. And Mr. Gotthelf is on the phone, I heard. Certainly, he might want to add a few comments from the council's perspective.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Considering I've been involved in the fire service and part of this organization for a while, let's be clear, this conservation ordinance was something that most conservation groups that are true conservation groups or are looking to preserve our environment have approved. It was something that the tribes were approving and wanted us to do, and others, number one. Number two, there is nothing in this ordinance that will restrict you in maintaining your property. When we put this ordinance together, we took a look at all types of property and watering throughout the year. And we took a look, and nobody, very few people would actually exceed those numbers if they follow the rules. All we're asking you to do is water during the proper times of the day. Don't water in the middle of the day. It's not going to help your plants. It's actually going to help you burn your plants as opposed. Water at night when it's cool, when you're going to get the most use and the least evaporation. If you overwater, it's not going to help either. So the reality of it is, if you maintain it the way Firewise recommends it, and you will have no impact, and this ordinance that they're talking about will have no impact on fire. And I guarantee you that if you have an issue, you let us know. We'll be glad to come take a look at your property.
And can I tone in here if you don't mind, gentlemen?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I want to make sure that this is, and Gene, you know, I've spoken to you, and I had the pleasure of meeting you and your husband. Your yard looks really nice. I want to make sure that we know that majority of wildland fires are not fought with water. They're fought with young men and women out there digging line in the back country, first and foremost. And then also when it comes to water, you know, you don't ever want to water an acre of lawn. I'm not recommending that, you know, and I'm not talking about exceeding water usage either. I am saying that, you know, if you can keep it Lincoln and green, do it, please. But you only want to do that within the first 30 feet of your home. But then also if you know, gets hot like it is and your yard goes dormant, I'm saying don't mow it. It just reduces your risk.
I can also chime in real quickly too, just with one last thing, and then we'll move on to someone else who has another question. You know, in the event that a wildfire did creep close to us, and I spoke to Public Works Director Rigos today about this, it is public safety always comes first, you know, if we were in a true risk situation. So I just wanted to make that clear. Do we have any other questions from anyone?
I do want to say one thing, Dana. I put my contact information in the chat, and the link that I put in there, if anybody would like a specific home wildfire safety evaluation of their property and community, they can click that link and hit request technical assistance. They'll fill out a short survey and it'll ping me to give them a contact.
Anyone else have a question?
Yes, I had a question.
Go ahead, Michael.
Hey, hey, Matt. Nice
Hey, Michael.
to hear from you again, and thanks for your presentation. Sorry for being a little late. I wasn't. Are folks aware of the new WUI maps from DNR from Ashley Blazina? If I recall, a large percentage of North Bend would be in a interface or intermix zone. If you could address that, and I have sort of two other questions as well, and I'll go ahead and put them forward. Is on materials. Many people in the city use bark to, in fact, reduce their water loss, and I'm a little concerned about that. Is that you have a collision between people that may want to use bark as a method of, you know, reducing their water loss and the flammability of that material. And lastly, on on WUI and embers, a particular concern with folks that have, half acre, 3/4 of an acre or more is the risk of embers, igniting their dormant lawns or vegetation for really inability to water, which is the quantity of water is limited. So there are some real big concerns around that. So if you could address, the risk areas in the city, how far embers may blow, and then, what are the, risks really from embers? And by the way, I appreciate your recommendations. One of the things I discovered was the real need to clean out your gutters in the summer, as gutters are a source of ignition material. And I don't know if that was covered, but if you could discuss maybe the risk areas, I think that might be helpful. And again, I apologize if that was covered.
No, it's totally fine, Mike. And I want to kind of address a couple different things. And I pulled up North Bend on that WUI map, and I'll show it here in a minute. As far as like embers, do you want to take that, Chief? Oh, I thought Chief clicked in. As far as embers go, okay, ember storms, and what we found out at the Paradise Fire, which all of us have heard about, it was a very devastating fire from California. The unfortunate thing is that community was devastated, but we learned a lot. And what we learned is those houses weren't ignited by direct flame. What they were ignited by was what they call ember storms. And because of the accumulation in their fine fuels, in their roofs and around their gutters and the base of their homes, is what was igniting those homes and helping that fire spread further, faster. So I want to address that. So when it comes to embers, and let's say you do have a dormant lawn, okay? If you've done the mitigation up to your property about that 5 feet and creating that, no fuel zone, no fine fuels, your vegetation's green, you have a hardscape or natural soil, the fire is going to tucker out right there because there's nothing to carry it any further. Okay. So I understand the use of bark, and there are great places to have bark, and there's science has shown that if you put bark in the hole of a tree, that it actually creates a more vigorous tree and helps it live very long and very healthy. But unfortunately, when we talk about wildfire, having bark within the first 5-year home is not it's not a practice that I recommend, and I do apologize for that. But I do want to kind of show something to the map that what Mike was talking about, and this is the new wildland urban interface map that Ashley Valencia and can anybody see that?
Yeah, awesome, Matt. I can see it. Thank you for sharing it. I had to generate this in ArcGIS myself, and great for people to know, and there would be an overlay of all the roads would be an awesome thing to have.
This is a map that DNR worked on for years to really identify the wildland urban interface. As you can see, North Bend is in the interface, not the intermix, which means it has 50% less canopy cover, 50% or less canopy cover. If I do correct what I usually Ashley speaks on this, the intermix is over 50%. And then as you see, the green is vegetated and non-inhabited. I think what we should actually take from this is because of the growth in population throughout King County, in this area, that the wildland urban interface is growing. It's throughout the county. It's not just in North Bend. And I'm going to scan out a little bit to kind of give people an understanding of how vast our wildland urban interface is and where it goes into intermix and when it goes into natural area of where it's undeveloped. So North Bend is an area of high risk. We all know that. And it's going to take all of us to really work together to ensure that North Bend can survive a wildfire event. I know that the city of North Bend has requested a community mitigation assistance team. It's called a CMAT, and they're working on trying to help the city become more fire resilient. If somebody would like to give me their address, I will show them where they're located.
Do we have any more questions from anyone? Alrighty, I am going to assume that we don't have any more questions from the audience. Feel free to chime in if you do, or if you just think of one as I'm wrapping up now. I want to thank Matthew, Chief Shutter, Chief Clark, and all of you for attending tonight. We really appreciate you taking the time to come out and learn about this important topic. This meeting was recorded. I will do my best to have it uploaded to the city website and to our YouTube channel tomorrow, and we will be sharing it out via our social media channels as well to give others the opportunity to see the presentation who maybe were not able to make it tonight. With that, I am going to call it a wrap unless Matthew or Chiefs, if you have anything else you want to add, I will, we will call it a wrap. And I thank everyone for their time and for attending this evening. Hopefully the next time we do this, it'll be in person.
Susan, did you have a question?
Go ahead, Suzanne, did you have a question?
I'm sorry, it took me so long to create a new Zoom thing that I missed the whole presentation.
Oh.
But did I hear you say, Matthew, that is it King County will come out and kind of assess our personal property to see? I live in Cedar Village and we have a 30-foot natural growth area between us and the freeway, and I worry that that area is more susceptible to fire because I've left it pretty natural.
Suzanne, I said you were in here. I am part of the conservation district, which means I'm not part of county government. We're a special purpose district, like your fire district, like your schools, except our focus is natural resource. And yeah, I put a link in the chat box. If you click that link and hit request technical assistance and fill out a short survey, I will set up a time to come out and assess your property and with your unique goals and objectives to see how we can mitigate fire around your home.
Okay.
You're on mute, Dana.
Thank you, sorry. Did anybody else, any other questions? If not, we're gonna call it an evening. And once again, thank you to everybody for attending. We do appreciate your time. And look for this video to be posted tomorrow to the city website, to YouTube, and via our social media channels. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great evening, everyone. Okay, stop recording.